Oh. So we could notice the instances are down. We'll update the instance details in the same folder shortly. So when instance is down, you may be online participant, you might be in the job guarantee program. The very important point is you no need to worry about the instance if it is down. We have very important alternative tasks where you can read whatever you captured from previous sessions, and you may go through the sessions what you could not attend. And if you are in the job guarantee program, you have multiple tasks: meeting, presentations, discussions, so and so. You please align with other tasks if instance is down for some time. So that's how we can just proceed even instance is down sometime. We don't need to worry about if it is down. So it's a kind of known thing. So it is not going to be up and run. It is not going to up and running all the time, since these instances are designed for training and learning purpose. Well, as a maintenance activity, they keep refreshing the data, or else sometimes they may just take it down in terms of maintenance activity. So that is a note. So let's proceed from where we stopped in the last session. Okay. So we completed these two pending tasks. Now we are ready with calendar, currency, chart of accounts, and accounting method. That means with these components, these four components, we can create primary ledger. With these four components, we can create the primary ledger. Now the question is, how many primary ledgers do we need to create? Within the primary ledger, what are the components we have? How many we have to create? Let's look into those details. Take example, client is operating the business only in one country. So client is operating so I'm taking as a case one. The case one is client is operating the business only in USA. Now, so how many calendars, currencies, chart of accounts, accounting methods we require? So in the case one, only one country. Since one country, one calendar is enough. And one country, only one currency. That currency we call as functional currency or local currency. What are the currency we use in our primary ledger? What are the currency we use in our primary ledger? Ideally, that should be functional currency. Since functional currency we include within our primary ledger, that currency you can call as ledger currency also. Make a note. The functional currency or ledger currency, both we can say same. Instead of calling it as functional currency, we can call it as ledger currency. By default, the country local currency we select when we create the primary ledger. So one functional currency, or say one ledger currency. So when we talk about chart of accounts, one COA, one chart of account is enough, and one accounting method. One accounting method. So one accounting method is enough. case one. Case one. So say client is operating business in only one country, the country financial year based calendar. Whatever the financial year is followed in that country, accordingly we need accounting calendar, or simply say calendar, and only one functional currency, or you say ledger currency, one chart of account, one accounting method in case of one country. Now let's take case 2. Okay, take case 2. Take case 2. In case 2, say client is operating business in USA and India. Now, how many calendars we need? We have to look at these two countries. What financial years are followed in the respective countries? Accordingly, we need to create our accounting calendars. If you look at USA and India, we have a different financial years. In USA, Jan to December is the financial year. In India, April to March are financial years. If you look at this case, okay, let me write here the data points. Calendars, currencies, COA, accounting methods. In case 2, two countries, we need two calendars. We need two calendars. For India, one calendar, USA, another calendar. Since financial years are different, two be required. When I talk about currencies, we have a separate local currencies. So we need two currencies. And chart of accounts. Even you are operating the business in two countries, we can use only one chart of account. For India and USA, we can use one chart of accounts. You don't need to create separate chart of accounts. You don't need to create separate chart of accounts. And accounting methods. It could be one or two. You can use the same accounting method for two countries. If you have some specific accounting requirements because of some rule within the USA or India, you can go with the separate accounting methods. What Oracle is providing, you can use that, you can modify as per India and USA. Here you can say one or two. Same you can use, or it could be two. Each country separate accounting method, or for two countries, same accounting method. Yes, above it is written accounting method, but still I'm writing here. So this is what we have to understand. And I am taking another case. Case 3. Case 3 I'm taking. So USA, UAE, and India. Okay, three countries, client is operating the business. How many calendars are required? In USA and UAE, we use Jan to December as a period, the accounting calendar range. So for the USA and UAE, say one calendar is enough. For India, April to March, we need one more calendar. Total two calendars. So first two countries, same calendar, Jan to December, and India, separate calendar since the financial year is different, two. And when you talk about currencies, for three countries, three different currencies, which we are calling as here currencies, we are referring functional currencies. The same we can call as ledger currencies. Three currencies. When you talk about chart of accounts, So the chart of accounts, we can say one COA. If you want to have separate COA, yes, we can, but not required. But not required. The general practice, the best practice would be one COA across multiple countries also. So when we talk about accounting method, it could be one, or it could be two, or it could be three also. So whatever Oracle is delivering, the same accounting method you may use across these three countries. You want to do some changes based on your business requirement that you may require only in one country or two countries. In that case, accordingly you can modify. Or else if you want to maintain separate accounting method for each country by doing certain changes within the accounting method, it could be three also. It totally depends. It can be one or two or three accounting methods. And you cannot say more than three because we have only three countries, max three. So that's how we can define. Now, when we talk about ledgers, how many ledgers we can have? How many primary ledgers? When I say ledger, it's a primary ledger. How many ledgers we need? For each country, we need one primary ledger. Each country, we need one primary ledger. In USA, we need one primary ledger. In case 2, for USA and India, for each country, separate primary ledgers, we need two ledgers. And case 3, client is operating the business in 3 countries, they need 3 primary ledgers. 3 primary ledgers. So this is what we have to understand. 3. Now, when we are part of implementation, we come across with the different experiences. Here I'm taking one of the example which you can see for reality. Say you are operating the business only in UAE. Only in UAE. So how many ledgers required? Number of ledgers. When you say ledgers, primary ledgers. Only you are operating the business in UAE. How many primary ledgers required? So by default, you can say one. True, one is enough. One is enough. Only presence in UAE. How many ledgers we required? Only one. When only one? It could be only one business or multiple businesses. Say client is into consulting, financials, and constructions, and some services. They might be into multiple businesses, different vertical of businesses or different type of businesses. Since country is one primary ledger is enough. One primary ledger is enough, irrespective of they are into how many businesses. That is pretty much possible. The reason within the same primary ledger, or else let me write it as primary ledger here also. So within the single primary ledger, you can maintain multiple companies related data. Still, you can segregate and you can maintain and you can set the security also. In one country, if client is operating the multiple businesses, say in UAE, client is into 20 different businesses. How many primary ledgers required? One is enough. One is enough. Within the same primary ledger, so we can maintain the company related informations and we can record the transactions and we can produce the reports, and still we can keep the data very secured and we can control company specific data based on the business process. All are pretty much possible. Yes, we will understand and we will work on those. How that is possible, we will understand. But reality, when we do the implementation, some clients, they don't accept what we say. When we say, hey, you are operating business in UAE, yes, you are doing 20 different businesses. You can go with one primary ledger. When you say, they can say, we are operating 20 businesses. We want to have separate primary ledger for each business. When they says, you can advise them saying that how the primary ledger works, how they can segregate the 20 different businesses data within the same primary ledger, how we can restrict one business to access another business data. These all valid points we may convey to advice to give a better advice to the client. If they are accepting, okay. If they are not accepting, finally we have to go with the client decision. So there won't be any option left for us. We try to educate them. We give advice. Sometimes we may try to convince the client. If they are understanding and if they are listening to us, that would be great. If they are not listening to us, only what we have to do is what they want. So we come across in few projects, client says, no, we have 20 businesses. Each business we need one ledger. If you go with one ledger for multiple businesses in one country, the maintenance will become very easy. The maintenance will become easy. The reason, every month you have to close the periods. You have to close the periods. And every month you have to perform the month-end closing activities. In one country, since you have a 20 businesses, if you are going to have a 20 primary ledgers, 20 primary ledgers we have to maintain separately. And for 20 primary ledgers, we have to perform the period end activities, closing the period and opening the next period. And if you have many ledgers, few businesses may not close the periods. And if you have everything in one primary ledger without one specific company related pending transactions, you cannot close the primary ledger. In entire primary ledger, everything need to be settled. Then only we can close the primary ledger. If any company is not settling certain transactions within the same primary ledger, so since other companies wants to close the period, because of the reason, there will be push for rest of the companies. So that's how we can bring everything on the same page, and we can set certain control, and we can, harmonize the things across the organization, and you can streamline the process. For these reasons, since one company in one country, one primary ledger is the best practice, but sometimes we come across where clients are interested to go with the separate primary ledgers because they are doing different businesses in the same country, and they say our management also different, our teams are different, etc., etc. That could be true, but there is no great reason to go with the separate primary ledgers within one country. Sometimes clients say some reason. So when you talk about closing the periods, we close the periods in the different intervals, etc., etc. Whatever they say, ultimately they have to close by end of the month. We discussed, we call it as end of the month. No company is closing the period exactly end of the month. They take some time, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 days time, or 10 days also, if it is a big organization. So to settle and to close the periods. So this is a key point. Here is a key point to understand how many ledgers we need to create. By default, or you can say as a best practice, one primary ledger for one country, irrespective of number of businesses client is operating. Irrespective of how many businesses client is operating in the same country. Here, the parameter is country. In one country, one primary ledger is enough, but sometimes, no doubt, more than 90% we come across with this case. In one country, only one primary ledger. Maybe 5% or less than 5%, you may come across where client says the one is not enough for us. We want to go with more than one primary ledger. In that case, we don't have any option. So that we should fulfill by creating those many primary ledgers. So what about chart of accounts? What about chart of accounts? Since here we are taking the case as only in USA, one chart of account is enough. Only one chart of account is enough. Now let's take example. So they are operating the business in 10 countries. 10 countries. How many chart of accounts required? When you say 10 countries, how many primary ledgers? Yes, 10 primary ledgers. For each country, one primary ledger. By default, if they want to have more than one primary ledger, that is also possible, but not required. They may have a specific reason saying that, no, we want to, yes, we are doing this 10 businesses, but in this country, for each set of 5 businesses, we want to have a separate primary ledger. That could be their requirement. That could be their requirement. Again, there will be some challenges. Say in one country, if you are going to have more than one primary ledgers, so the data we are segregating across the ledgers. Tomorrow, if you want to club the entire data, it is not easy task. Again, we have to bring the data from all the ledgers to separate ledgers so that you can produce the report for the entire the country operations across the businesses. That we will understand. Those are the separate concepts. I'm trying to just give you kind of high level understanding with the terminology. No need to get into that. So if you take this case, client is operating the business in 10 countries, and how many chart of accounts required? As a best practice, one is enough. One COA is enough. If you are using one chart of account for multiple countries, that chart of account we can call as global chart of account. For multiple countries, how many chart of accounts are required? One chart of account is enough. If you are going to use one chart of account for multiple countries, that we call as global chart of accounts. That we call as global chart of accounts. That we call as global chart of accounts. So that's what we have to understand. In most of the implementations, we come across the case as global chart of accounts. Okay, global chart of accounts. Sometimes why we may go with more than one primary ledger in same country. Say for example, you take the same case, only they are operating the business in UAE. How many primary ledgers they need? One primary ledger is a best practice. Sometimes there could be need of two primary ledgers. Why? So we are taking the case as they are operating two companies, company 1 and company 2. So as per company 1, they need 8 segments. As per company 2, they need 9 segments. But still, reality, what we do is we will take into consideration company 1 need 8, company 2 need 9, and there will be many segments which are common in the for two companies. So that's how we sort out. Finally, with 8 or 9, we'll create only one chart of account, and we can use that one chart of account and we create only one primary ledger. If the requirement is for company 1, 8 distinct segments in the chart of accounts. 8 segments are totally different from company 2. So in that case, since segments are totally different for this company 1 and company 2, we create separate chart of accounts. Company 1 and company 2, we can create separate chart of accounts. Now the two chart of accounts, you cannot take into one primary ledger for UAE. You can have only one chart of accounts in one primary ledger. We can have only one chart of account in one primary ledger. Now, for company 1, you have one chart of accounts. For company 2, you have separate chart of accounts. Why you have two? Each company has separate data tracking requirements as well as reporting requirements. Since two companies got distinct segment requirements, so we created separate COA. So one COA we can maintain, only one COA we can maintain within one primary ledger. Now even client is not asking for two primary ledgers. We need to create two primary ledgers since for two companies chart of accounts are totally different. So why we may create more than one primary ledger in one country if chart of accounts are different for each company. How many chart of accounts we are going to use in one country, those many primary ledgers we should create minimum. So that's a reality, but for our understanding purpose, I'm taking this case. Generally, we don't get into this kind of use cases, scenarios. So 8, 9, we will just match, which are matching, which are not matching, the distinct with all the unique across these two companies will create the chart of accounts, the respective segments. The same chart of account we use in one or multiple primary ledgers as per the client requirement. But to just make you to understand, when we may create multiple chart of accounts in the same country, so this is the example you can take. In same country, if each company has different COA requirements, chart of accounts requirements. When you say chart of account requirement, chart of account for reporting purpose. Now we can say if every company has separate reporting requirements in terms of tracking the data and producing the reports, that is a case where we need to create more than one chart of accounts in same country. So how many COAs we create? Those many ledgers we have to create. So that is another point we have to understand. But the real practice, the most of the projects we come across with global chart of accounts. Even we are operating the business in 100 countries. Yes, we can use one chart of account across those countries, but for each country, we'll have a separate primary ledger. But in all the primary ledgers, we can have a same chart of accounts. Still, we can build the security between the countries. So this is the point we have to understand when we talk about how many primary ledgers we require in one country and how many chart of accounts we require in one country or across the countries. So this is all about understanding the number of calendars and all. If I take example here, 10 countries, how many calendars we need? The 10 countries, if they are following separate financial years, 10 calendars we required. So out of 10 countries, 8 countries are following Jan to December as a financial year. For those 8 companies or 8 countries, one calendar. For remaining 2 countries, they might be following different financial years. So 2 more we need. Total 3 calendars are enough for 10 countries. Since 8 countries are following the same financial year, remaining 2 countries are following the different financial years. And when you talk about currencies, for 10 countries implementation, how many currencies? 10 functional currencies by default. 10 functional currencies. And we are not talking about foreign currencies. Okay, with how many other country currencies they're recording the transactions. Accordingly, those need to be picked, but it is not primary point when we talk about primary ledger. In primary ledger, always we include the local currency or say functional currency or ledger currency. 10 countries, how many COAs? The best practice, most of the cases we see only one primary ledger, only one COA, even for 10 countries. If required, you may maintain separate COA for each and every country, or else maybe for 5 countries, one COA, other 5 countries, another COA you can maintain, but you don't come across such kind of use cases in the most of the cases. So we always see global chart of accounts. And when you talk about accounting method, 10 countries, so maybe with a grouping 2-3 accounting methods, or every country, if they want to modify the accounting method as per their accounting or reporting requirements, that need to be customized, modified. In that case, we may need separate accounting method for each and every country. Each and every country, we may need separate accounting method. So this is what we have to understand when we talk about primary ledger creation. Any questions here, please? Any questions from anyone, please?
So Lakshman, based on like country or chart of account or currency or calendar, like we will decide the primary ledger, like on which basis basically, like which is the common.
To create the primary ledger, what we need? 4 Cs.
4 Cs, right?
Yeah. We'll pick 4 Cs and we'll create primary ledger. Okay, to create the primary ledger, we are not going with any criteria. We need one calendar, we need one currency, we need one chart of accounts, we need one accounting method. That's it.
No, that is fine. But like,
see, make it simple. Just you tell me exact point
like
so we
how,
can discuss.
yeah. So basically, my point is like, how many primary ledger do we need? So on which basis we are going to decide?
Here we discussed, right? I took 3 cases and we discussed how many ledgers we need. If you are operating the business in only one country, ideally you need one. And also we discussed another case, right? You may go with more than one ledger. When? You may want to have separate ledger for each business, or else maybe for each business, you have 2 businesses. For each business, you want to have a separate COA. I took the case, 2 countries. How many ledgers you need? By default, 2 are enough. But you may go with more than 2. Say, USA, you have 2 businesses. India, you have 2 businesses. You want to maintain each business separate primary ledger. So, India 2, USA 2, total 4. Even countries are 2. But reality, 2 are enough. Mostly we create 2 only. I took example and I explained. See, if you are not able to understand any point, you can highlight that. Okay. How many? That clearly we discussed. Any specific point, you can just connect to specific in this case, in that case, etc., etc. That can be a great question.
So Lakshman,
Please, yeah.
So Lakshman, if my understanding is correct, it all depends on the number of segments. If it is not common, then we need to create separate COA. And based on those COA, we create the number of primary ledgers. Is my understanding correct?
Yeah, that is correct. But before that, we discussed one point. So we don't go with that approach also we discussed. Here, just I give an example for our understanding purpose only. Okay. So one company 1 need 8 segments, company 2 need 9 segments. We'll try to sort it out, which are common, which are distinct. By finalizing for company 1 and 2, what segments we need. Accordingly, we design the chart of accounts. That will become only one chart of accounts. This is just for our understanding. If somebody is going with a separate chart of accounts in the same country, since they're planning to track and report the data separately, then this is a example we can take to understand. But ideally, that won't be the case. Based on the companies, we don't design the chart of accounts. Based on the countries, also we are not going to design. Based on the entire solution, how many countries, business is going to be same, countries are going to be different. So when we design the chart of accounts based on the client reporting requirements, we create the chart of accounts. And how many countries client is operating the business, for all those countries also you can use same chart of accounts. If they want to maintain separate COA, yes, we can create the best practice, and what is trending in the implementations is one COA for one organization, irrespective of in how many countries they are operating the business.
Okay. And this is applicable across all the sectors, right? I mean, be it banking, healthcare,
Any
retail. Okay.
any sector.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any questions here, please? Okay. Now a few questions for you. If you can answer, otherwise leave it. Okay. Fine. Say you are part of one implementation project. How many primary ledgers you need to create? This is the question. Okay. You are part of an implementation project. How many primary ledgers you need to create?
It depends on
Depends on the country.
Yeah, please.
Depends on the number of countries we are doing the implementation, and right, as we discussed on this on the number of segments and the COAs.
Yes. But don't end your answer with that depending on number of. You can say, so by default, for each country, we need to maintain one separate primary ledger. That should be the first statement. After that, you can say, so in each country, yes, we need only one primary ledger. If required, we can maintain more than one primary ledger also. This is how you have to answer. You are part of an implementation project. Tell me how many primary ledgers are required. You can say for each country, one primary ledger is required, and we can create more than one primary ledger if there is any requirement from the client to maintain separate ledgers for each and every business. That's it. You are covering the two cases. Yeah.
Got it.
That's what expected. Now, say we are implementing for one of the client for 5 countries. Now you tell me how many calendars and how many chart of accounts are required. Let other person answer.
One chart of account.
Okay.
And if the 5 countries, if any of those countries have like the same calendar year, like January to like December or like April to March, we can make them as one calendar. Say for example, if 3 countries are having the same calendar, we can say like 1 and 2 countries having a different calendar. So then we can create 2 calendars. That should be enough.
Yeah. Your question is, the client is operating business in 5 countries. How many calendars and how many chart of accounts? You can answer, mostly we create only one COA as a global chart of accounts. There is no need to create separate chart of account for each and every country. When we talk about calendars, so we have to look at the country financial year. If our 5 countries financial years are same, we create only one calendar for 5 countries, and we use the same calendar in the 5 country primary ledgers. If financial years are different, across these 5 countries, how many different financial years we have, those many accounting calendars we have to create. Yeah, this is how the answer is expected. Fine.
Got it.
So just make a note of these points and you should be able to deliver the answer as expected. These are the key points when you talk about how many primary ledgers, how many chart of accounts. Still any questions on this point, please? Number of primary ledgers, number of chart of accounts. Another question. You are part of one of the implementation. How many calendars, how many primary ledgers, how many COAs you need to create? You are part of one of the implementation and you tell me how many primary ledgers, how many calendars, how many chart of accounts you need to create.
So
So for
Okay.
each country, yeah, go ahead.
So by default, we create one calendar, one currency, and one COA. For when we're doing implementation.
1 second. That's the wrong answer.
Yeah.
Any other answer?
Okay.
For each country, one primary ledger is required. Depends on like if the client wants to go for 2 primary ledgers, they can go. And for each country, they can go for a global chart of accounts. And if clients want to be like the another COA also, we can go for that. And currencies, when it comes to currencies, we can go if the countries are following the same calendar year, like calendar type and fiscal year, we can go like if they are following different, we can go like 2 calendars. If they are following the same, we can go with 1.
Yeah. Here, you should not answer directly. There should be a question or there should be some kind of structuring the data. I just mentioned you are part of implementation project. You tell me how many primary ledgers, how many calendars, how many chart of accounts you need. You have to start with answer. It all depends on for how many countries we are doing the implementation. This is how you have to start. Without addressing country or number of countries, you have to bring that example, then you have to explain. Because I am asking the question without addressing number of countries. You are also answering without addressing number of countries, doesn't make any sense. My question is, you are part of an implementation project, you tell me how many primary ledgers, how many accounting calendars and how many accounting methods are required is my question. But it doesn't make sense if you are answering directly by taking that question. There should be a cross question, or else at least you have to bring some example to answer it. Say for example, I ask the question, this is how you can explain. Okay, so if we are going to implement for 2 countries, we need 2 primary ledgers. For 2 countries, we can have same chart of accounts. Ideally, it would be same. If required, we can maintain separate chart of accounts. And again, when you talk about calendars, we have to look at the country financial year. For 2 countries, financial years are same. 1 calendar is enough. We can use that 1 calendar in the 2 different primary ledgers. If financial years are different, we need to create separate accounting calendars to use in the 2 different country primary ledgers. So this is how your answer is expected. Yep. So you have to think through and answer, and you have to structure, and they may not give the clues exactly, but you have to create the clue to answer it. Still any questions from anyone, please? So these
So
points
Lakshman,
are very, very important. Then you can just people can call you are a consultant. Otherwise, nothing. Yeah.
So Rashman, when we start our answers by saying each country will go for one ledger, so is that not the right way of answering? I mean, we need to compulsory do a cross question on asking the number of countries.
No,
Where do we
we
move?
are cross question means we have to ask ourselves, means to bring the example I'm telling,
Okay.
right? Or else you can ask that question, nothing wrong. Two ways you can go, right? So ultimately you want to make valid statement. That is a ultimate target.
Hmm.
What you speak, that should become that should be valid. If I say you are part of implementation project and tell me how many, instead of asking the question, best thing is you ask the question yourself and bring the answer saying that if the implementation is happening for 4 countries, 5 countries, 6 countries, then the person can understand, yes, you are able to connect the proper dots. I'm not saying you ask the question who is asking this question. No. You can have cross question yourself, or else you just bring some example, accordingly you explain. That's it.
Got it.
Yeah. Any other questions here, please? Great. No questions. Now, let's focus on few other key aspects of information. Then we can jump into the instance. Now, so we are clear about how many primary ledgers we need to create in one country or multiple countries. Again, how many calendars we require, how many currencies, how many chart of accounts, and how many accounting methods we need in one or multiple countries. Now, say we are operating the business. So we are operating the business in 5 countries. We are operating the business in 5 countries. Now tell me how many registrations we require.
5 registration minimum.
Yes. In each country, we have to go for separate registration. The minimum we need 1 registration in each country. Now, if I take example of in each country, say we are doing 10 different businesses. Now tell me how many registrations we require in each country under total 5 countries. In each country, we are doing 10 different businesses.
50.
In each country, we can have a minimum of 1, but the maximum of 10 registrations.
Yes, very much valid. So since country is the same, you may do 10 businesses or 100 businesses. Yes, you can go with the 1 registration, and all businesses you can include in the same registration, saying that what is the nature of each and every business. So that's how you can operate your business. Or else you want to have a separate registration for each and every business in the same country. Yes, that also works. So it could be 1 or 10. It could be 1 or 10. It should not be like 10 registrations required. No, there is no mandate rule which says 10 businesses, 10 registrations. So 1 registration, yes, you can run the 10 businesses also. So this is the point we have to understand. So the registrations, whatever client has for their business, accordingly, we have to create something in the system. So you are implementing for one client and you have to understand how many registrations they have. When we sit for the meeting, we talk to the client. Hey, you are operating the business in US, you are into these many businesses. How many registrations do you have? They'll share the information with us, and also they share the registration document also with us. They share the registration document, the incorporation certificate, the client will share with us. Why they will share with us? That information we have to capture into the system. Each client registration, each client business registration, we have to create in the system as legal entity. We call as LE. Each client registration we need to capture into our application with the concept called as legal entity. A legal entity refers the company registration information. Here, what details would be there as a part of legal entity? So what is a banner name? With what name company got registered, and what is a company registration number, and with which physical address the company is registered, the registration address. Mostly that would be corporate office address or headquarters address. So these are the details need to be captured as a part of legal entity. Legal entity is nothing but company registration information. So when you do the implementation for your client, how many legal entities do we need to create in the system? That all depends on how many registrations the client has within the same country. If you are implementing for one of our client in 10 countries, how many legal entities we need to create? Just we have to look at how many registrations they have across those 10 countries. So the number of registrations are equal to number of legal entities what we create in the system. Legal entity is nothing but the company registration details. Each registration we need to capture into the system as a legal entity. And here you may have multiple businesses, maybe one registration. But for 2 countries, you cannot have a one registration. Each country, because how the countries, the administrates and laws, everything is totally different. So because of the reason, every country you have to go with a separate registration, and within the same country, irrespective of number of businesses, you can go with registration. Multiple businesses, one registration, or else multiple businesses, multiple registration. Multiple businesses, one registration means only one legal entity. Multiple businesses, multiple registrations means multiple legal entities. And as a part of legal entity, what details we have to capture, with what name company got registered, and what is the registration address, and what is the registration number. Primarily, these are the details we need to capture into the system. And when you create your primary ledger, within the primary ledger, we have one of the component called as chart of accounts. Within the chart of accounts, we have one of the segment called as company. So within the company segment, we maintain all the companies. All the companies you have with a single registration or multiple registration, that we have to define, that we have to create in the system as a legal entity. So legal entity is nothing but company registration information. So how many registrations we have, those many legal entities we need to create in the system. Now, any questions on this legal entity concept, please? Any questions, please? Okay, no questions. Now, say we are operating the business in USA. So how many primary ledgers required? Typically only one primary ledger. I'm taking the name here, say ERP3 USA primary ledger. I can give the name as ERP3 USA primary ledger, or else I can have name like this. I don't include ERP3, the entire implementation for ERP3. Simply I can give the ledger name as USA primary ledger. Yes, we can give naming convention like this, or else say just US primary ledger. So this is how we use the naming convention when you create the primary ledgers. Okay, you can say company name, you can take as a prefix. Then that primary ledger you are creating for which country, take the country name, short name, and what you are creating primary ledger. Company, country, and what you are creating. Or else simply you can take country and what you are creating, primary ledger. So this is how we can use the naming convention. Let's proceed with name called as ERP3 USA primary ledger. Okay, now, so within this primary ledger, when you say primary ledger, always we have to recall the 4 components. We have calendar, currency, chart of accounts, and accounting method. And we don't need to focus much on calendar, currency, accounting method. As of now, we always should focus on chart of accounts. Within the primary ledger, we have chart of accounts. Within the chart of accounts, what we have, we should focus to understand further. Say client is operating the business in USA. That is the reason we created on primary ledger. So client is into, say, 4 businesses. Client is into 4 businesses. So those 4 businesses you have to maintain within the chart of accounts as a 4 different companies. So as per our chart of account, the 4 companies, let's capture here. Already we created in the system within our chart of accounts. I'm taking these businesses. These are the 3, and we'll add one more, ERP3 consulting services. ERP3 financial services, ERP3 software development, ERP3 BPO services. So within primary ledger, we have these 4 companies within the company value set. Now, when we look at the registrations, say for each registration, they have, each company, they have separate registration. Okay, each company, they have separate registration like this. So they have registrations like ERP3 consulting services, INC, and financial services, Inc. So this is their registration name. This is how these 4 companies are incorporated. Now, when we maintain these 4 companies within the chart of accounts, for every company, we maintain company code, right? So for first company, 1000, second company, 2000, 3000, for third company, for fourth company, 4000. Now, so within our primary ledger, we have 4 companies data, and other side you have 4 registrations for 4 companies. I'm taking 2 different cases. This I call as case 1, the other one I call as case 2. I'm taking here case 1, this I call as case 2. Okay, we'll look into the data. First, we'll proceed with the case 1. The case 1, what we have to do is, which company you are operating with, which registration, that we have to specify in the system. all the companies you maintain in the primary ledger, but which company you are operating with which registration, that you have to specify as per your system. But in case of case one, it is pretty straightforward. So what we do in the system is we do the mapping. We do the mapping between the companies and registrations. Let's look into that. So here is the consulting services registration. Now with this registration, what business you are doing? Consulting services business. That means this 1000 you have to map to this legal entity. So whenever you record the transactions with this company 1000 ERP3 Consulting Services, that always points to ERP3 Consulting Services Inc. Inc. So with this company, whatever the transactions you record, based on this registration, you have to report to the government. So that's how every company what you have in your, whatever the companies you listed in your primary ledger, for every company you have to address that company is running with which registration, that we have to specify. Okay, that we have to specify. So the financial services business you are doing with this registration. And when you talk about software development, you are just doing, you are into that software development with this registration. And if you talk about BPO services, you are operating the BPO services business with this registration. With this registration. Now, since it is spreadsheet, by using this arrow marks, I can make some connection between the companies, list of companies, whatever we have in our primary ledger, and these all are legal entities. Registration information, legal entities. So between the companies what we have in your primary ledger, and for those companies we have a separate registration or single registration, that is all about legal entities information we can map. But as per our applications, you cannot map directly between the legal entities and the companies what we have in your primary ledger. So if you want to map, if you want to specify, so you are recording the transactions, or else the what are the companies you are running, which company you are running under which registration. If you want to specify, first step is these 4 legal entities you have to assign to primary ledger, so that within the primary ledger, what are the companies you have, those you can specify which company you are running under which registration. That means to map the data between the legal entities and primary ledger, first we have to map legal entity with primary ledger, so that within the primary ledger, whatever the companies you have, those you can map with the respective legal entities. Here the point is, the first step is all legal entities you have to assign to primary ledger. That is the first step. First step. After that, the second step is this. All. First assign legal entities to primary ledger. Then within the primary ledger, whatever the companies you have, these companies you can assign to respective legal entities. Now tell me, for company segment, what is the alternative name, or how we should call as a company segment? We discussed in the previous session.
Balancing segment.
Balancing segment. Now I'll ask another question. Here. One sec. Yeah. Now. So This segment name is company. I call these details as company segment values. Here is a department. This data we call as department segment values. So when I call segment as a company, I'm calling as company segment values. If I call the segment as a department, I'm calling as department segment values. Now you tell me, instead of calling company as a company, if I call it as balancing segment, how you should call these values?
Balancing segment values.
Yes. If I call it as company, company segment values. If I call it as balancing segment values. Keep segment name as a prefix, add the term called as segment values, just values. So department values, account values, company values. Instead of company, I'm calling as balancing segment. The values I call as balancing segment values. So that means the company values you can call as balancing segment values. That is a point. Just based on the segment name, we are deriving the name for the values. When you call segment as company segment values. If you call segment as a balancing segment values. These four are company values. Now we are calling company as a balancing segment. Why we are calling company as a balancing segment? Who answered? They can answer this question also. Somebody answered, right? So you can answer why we are calling company as a balancing segment. Could you please talk about it? No? Fine. Anyone?
Because the primary balancing segment label is assigned to
That's it.
company.
Based on the label, simply you can say. Based on the label we are calling. Since we assign primary balancing segment label to company, so that's how we are able to call it as balancing segment. Since segment we are calling as balancing segment, the values we call as balancing segment values. Balancing segment values. Now, these values we can call as company values or balancing segment values. This we can call as company segment values or balancing segment values. Yeah. These are balancing segment values. Let me write it here. Balancing segment values, short BSV. Okay. So if you want to assign the balancing segment values to respective registrations, respective legal entities, the first step is we need to assign legal entity to primary ledger, so that within the primary ledger, what are the balancing segment values we have, those we can assign to respective legal entities. This is a case one I am taking, where we have 4 companies and 4 registrations. Now we are taking case 2. Case 2, yes, we have 4 companies. So we don't have 4 registrations. Say we have only 1 registration. So ERP tree. So ERP tree group. So this is the registration we have. Yes, we have 4 companies, but we don't have 4 registrations. We have a single registration. We have single registration. Whatever it may be, it doesn't matter. We have to do the same task. So first what we have to do, the legal entity, whatever we have, that we need to assign to primary ledger, so that these 4 companies you are running under which registration, that you can specify. These 4 companies are running under same registration. The consulting services business belongs to this legal entity, and rest of businesses also you are running under same registration. What is the reality that you have to replicate in the system? Okay, how you are operating the business, that you have to set up in the system. This business you are running under same registration. and even BPO services business also you are running under same registration. So this is how we have to specify in the system. Okay, this we are calling as legal entity. We're calling as legal entity. So legal entity is nothing but the company registration information. How many registrations the client has, those many legal entities we have to create in the system. And again, we need to do the mapping between the real registrations and the real companies what we see in the business. So number of companies and number of legal entities can be same or can be different. We took the two cases. The first case, yes, you have 4 companies and you have 4 registrations. And second case, you have 4 companies and you have only 1 registration. Whatever it may be, you have to do the mapping. We have to specify this company you are running under which registration. For that purpose, we have to map the company with legal entity. We have to map the company with legal entity. So this is a point we have to understand here. So simply you can say we are mapping BSV, balancing segment values with the legal entities. Before we map, first we have to map the legal entity to primary ledger. Otherwise, you cannot make the connection between balancing segment values and our legal entities. If you want to make the connection, mapping between balancing segment values and legal entity, first we have to associate the legal entity with primary ledger. We have to create the connection between the legal entity and the primary ledger so that these two can talk each other for the further communication where we can map BSVs with legal entities. So any questions here to understand these cases or overall, please?
So each country will be having their own like legal entity numbers, right? Registration numbers. So will Oracle provides for all the countries, or we have to specify according to the country?
What do you mean by Oracle provides?
So for some countries they follow like FEI in IN numbers. For some countries they follow registration IDs, right?
Yes,
So
that
like
Oracle is facilitating. Based on whenever you select the country, accordingly Oracle will display relevant fields to capture the relevant information, what is part of the country registration. And again, you can play with the data also. We'll see when we create the legal entity.
okay.
Any other questions here, please?
So, Lakshman, when we are doing, when we are meeting with the client for the first time and going through this information, so is that the ready information that the client provides, or this thing has to be brought up by the consultants to these clients to provide these
Everything
all?
you have to ask. It's a free, but you have to ask. When we sit for the discussions, we have to talk to the client saying that we'll understand, we'll understand, we can ask open-ended questions saying that, could you please talk about how many just entities you have and how you are operating the business, the structure, etc. They'll talk about it. And definitely you have to ask the question, how many registrations you have. So everything you get to know by asking the questions. For everything what you want to know, you have to ask the questions. Yep.
Fine.
Yes. Next question, please.
Sir, actually, all the terminology is very new to me. So, if I understand correct, the legal entity, each legal entity can you assume as registration?
Yeah, that's
Sorry
what
for
we're
my question
discussing,
is
right?
illegal.
That's what we're discussing. Every registration you have to create in the system as one legal entity. Each registration. Yeah, same point we are talking. Each registration you have to create as a one legal entity. If client has a 10 registrations, 10 legal entity. If client has only one registration, one legal entity. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next question, please. Any other questions here, please? Some clients, what they do is they'll share their incorporation certificates to us. By seeing that certificate, we have to create the legal entities in the system. Some clients, they don't share registration documents. They'll ask us what data we need, only that data they provide. When we create the legal entity within our system, we will understand exactly what data we need to create the legal entity. Accordingly, we can collect the data from the client. Any other questions here, please? Okay. No questions. Now, so these few tasks are pending from our side. What tasks? Primary ledger creation, legal entity creation, and mapping. That just let me write here. The same we will execute in the system. Okay. So here we discussed about chart of accounts, and we listed exactly what tasks need to be completed in the system. The same way, when you talk about primary ledger and legal entities creation, what exact tasks we need to perform in the system? Let's see that. Okay. Creating primary ledger and creating legal entity and relevant tasks. So what task we are going to perform? Let's see. Say create primary ledger and say specify ledger options. So specify ledger options. After specifying ledger options, we need to complete our primary ledger. Our primary ledger definition we need to complete. We will understand what does it mean by specify, what does it mean by complete. Those are very simple to understand. We'll discuss. First, we need to create the primary ledger. How to create the primary ledger we discussed. Okay, by using calendar, currency, chart of accounts, and accounting method, we can create the primary ledger. Once we create the primary ledger, we have to specify the ledger options, or you can say set ledger options. Anything is fine. Specify primary ledger, specify ledger options or set ledger options. What does it mean by specifying the ledger options? That we will see in the system. After specifying the ledger options, we need to complete the primary ledger. What is the meaning of complete? What system will really going to perform? So how things will get updated, we will understand here. We'll see that. Once these three tasks are complete, we can say our primary ledger is ready to use. Our primary ledger may be ready to use, but we should be ready to record the transactions by following the legal process. For that, we need legal entity. So we need legal entity. So we need to create legal entity. We need to create legal entity. If you want to create the legal entity, first you have to create the legal address in the system. With which address these entities are registered, or this entity is registered. Okay, so we'll go with one legal entity. We don't need to create these many. We can understand this. And you create multiple, accordingly you can do mapping. If you create one, all you can map to only one legal entity. When you create the legal entity, we have to specify the registration address. That address we need to create in the system. First, we have to create the registration address. of our company, that registration address, what we have in the registration certificate, that we need to create in the system as a legal address. Create legal address, nothing but legal entity address. Create legal address, nothing but registration address. With that address, create legal entity. Create legal entity. So if you want to create the legal address, that information should be available in the system. That information should be available in the system. So I want to create legal address for US. As per US address style, I need the county information, the state information, city information, and the postal code information. As per US address style, I need the complete information, and that information Oracle is providing. For most of the countries, they are providing the country specific data, all the states, all the cities, all the postal codes, but that we have to activate in our instance. Yes, Oracle is providing in every environment that you have to activate, or you can say you have to import. Within the instance it is available, but you have to activate it. So once you activate, all the countries, states, cities, postal codes will be available in the instance. By using the data, you can create the legal address. Not only legal address, any address you can create, your supplier address, your customer address, your company address, everything you can create. So with that legal address, you can create legal entity. So the data what they are providing for each and every country, for the data, Oracle is giving the name as geographical data. So this we have to activate, or you can say import. So within our instance, now if I go on to try to create the address, the US related data may not be available if it is a fresh instance. But if I want to create legal address for USA, within USA, what states, counties, cities, postal codes we have, that data is required, so that simply I can select state, I can select county, city, and postal codes, and I can create the specific or say valid address. For that reason, we need to activate the geographical data for specific country called as US, since you want to create US address. So that's how we have to activate the geographical data, country specific data, so that for that country you can create the address. It could be any address, but here we are talking about legal address. Legal address is nothing but company registration address. Then we can create legal entity. After creating legal entity, that legal entity we need to assign to the primary ledger. Okay, same. That legal entity we need to assign to primary ledger. Same point. Say assign legal entity to primary ledger. Assign legal entity to primary ledger. After assigning legal entity to primary ledger, then we will assign balancing segment values to legal entity. If you don't assign legal entity to primary ledger, we cannot assign this balancing segment values to legal entity. It is not possible. Our requirement is we have to do the mapping between balancing segment values and the legal entity. That is not possible directly. For that reason, first we are assigning legal entity to primary ledger, so that within the primary ledger, what are the companies we have, those you can associate with the respective legal entities. So first task is assign legal entity to primary ledger, then assign balance and segment values. Why we are calling as balance and segment values? These values are company values. When you call company segment as a balancing segment, because we are assigning the balancing segment label, the company values you can call as balancing segment values. So say balancing segment values means BSV, balancing segment values. So now we have to assign BSV, balancing segment values, to legal entities, maybe one or multiple. Okay, legal entity, say legal entity or legal entities. So these are the tasks we have in the queue. These are the tasks we have in the queue. So our 4 C's are ready. With the 4 C's, we are going to create the primary ledger. After completing the primary ledger, so we have to specify the ledger options. When you say ledger options, we discussed. So, and yes, we discussed. Apart from that, we created few accounts in the account value set. And one of the account we discussed about returned earnings account. Returned earnings account, nothing but revenue minus expense. The difference we call as returned earnings surplus, or you can just call it as net income. You can use the different names. So whenever you create the primary ledger, the company, the target is earning the profits. The profits information you can maintain by using the account called as returned earnings. That means by using the specified ledger options, we have to provide returned earnings account for our ledger. So ledger level, we are going to maintain our returned earnings account. So within that ledger, whatever the transactions you record, accordingly system can calculate the returned earnings, means the profits or losses. Ultimate target is profit, so no need to talk about losses. So that system can calculate the profits. So when you create the primary ledger, the very key account, very important account is returned earnings, that we have to maintain at ledger level. To maintain at ledger level, we use the ledger options. Use the ledger options. When you talk about completing primary ledger, that is a separate story we will discuss when we do it. There are many other things which we have to understand that we will see. Since we want to create addresses, so we are going to activate or import geography data, not from outside, within the instance. Within the instance, Oracle is facilitating for every country specific data by following the country address style that we have to activate, so that the country specific addresses we can create. That may be your company registration address, or that may be where you are operating the business, that address. It may be your supplier address, it may be customer address, it may be your warehouse address. So whatever it may be the address, once you activate that country specific geographical data or geography data, so then you will be able to create the addresses. Now we are talking about legal entity related address, so we are calling as legal address. Then by using the legal address and other details, what is the exact registration name and what is the registration number, by using those details, by including the address, we can create legal entity. So that legal entity, we need to map to the balancing segment values, and then that is not possible directly. That is the reason assign legal entity to primary ledger. Then within the primary ledger, what are the balancing segment values we have, those you can assign to legal entity. So that tomorrow when you record the transactions with these companies, system will track this company transactions related reporting you have to do to the government through which entity. So reporting point of view, this tagging will be useful. Otherwise, I'll record the transactions in the system with this company code 1000 consulting services. I'll record. Tomorrow, when I'm going to report to the government within the US, so I should tag with which entity, with which registration. There won't be any clue if I don't specify. If I map this company with this legal entity, whenever I record the transaction in the system, automatically system will identify this legal entity, so that whenever I produce the reports, our job will become easy for which companies we have to report to government through which registration. So that is the reason this mapping is required. How reality things are aligned, accordingly we have to do the mapping in the system. So we are done for today. If you have any questions, you can stay back, we will discuss. Fine. Any questions on today's session, please? First, we'll see any questions from today's session. If no questions, we can talk about any questions from the previous sessions. If no questions from previous sessions, we can talk any generic questions related to this program. That's how we can just structure it. Now, any questions from anyone on today's session?
Lakshman, in the structure that you just mentioned from line number 242 to 249, from the configuration perspective, can we like create primary ledgers separately, create the legal entities separately? Like, is that we need to first create the primary ledger and only then we can go ahead and do the configuration for the create legal entity, or we can do it independently?
See, these are separate tasks. You see here I have primary ledger. Here I have legal entity. Later we are connecting. Okay, connecting. So these are separate tasks. Okay, these are separate tasks. I can segregate this. If I complete this task, my primary ledger is ready. I may not have primary ledger ready in the system. Still, I can complete my legal entity. But if I want to assign, I need primary ledger.
Got it. Okay.
Yep. This I can create separately. This I can create separately. But if I want to perform these two tasks, everything should be ready. So everything in the sequence. We are just discussing and doing whatever I'm writing. Also, I'm writing in the sequence. This is how it works. Any other questions, please? So these are the targeted tasks in our next session. The same sequence we are going to follow. Okay. So why I'm writing today itself, you just make a note, read and get ready. You know what exactly we are going to do in the next session, including the terminology, but we don't know how to do it. What we don't know, we'll come to know in the tomorrow session. But don't ignore this data, make a note, read and get ready. So that tomorrow when we go through the session, you can guide me also. I will ask the question. First, we have to create primary ledger. We created. Tell me what is the next step without referring your notebook. If you are able to say, we have to specify the ledger options, that would be great. Okay, that is expectation. That is the reason just in advance we are writing. The same I did in case of chart of accounts creation also. When we write something in advance, please make a note, read and get ready. Okay, not only what we write in advance, everything what we are discussing also please capture and you have to read and get ready. Very, very important. So any other questions, please?
I have a question from the last session.
Please.
So in the last session, we have mentioned if we don't want any values in the value set, so we can disable that value, right?
Yeah, any specific values, if you don't want, you can disable or else you can give the end date.
Okay. So you mean to say when we disable that, so the transaction which we have already captured with those values, will that still be able to a reporting purpose? Will that still be available for the reporting purpose?
Yes, it will remain as it is. The value will not be available to use in new transactions.
Okay.
Yes.
And then that combination will not be valid.
Yes.
Okay.
That will remain as it is because
Okay.
from now we don't want to use. That's it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, sir, I have a question on the 9th session
Yeah.
related to the adjustment period and all. So if the company purchased item in the middle of month Okay, the item has been delivered to the company, but the purchase invoice actually, the purchase invoice sent by the supplier after 1 month. Okay, so where the transaction will be recorded, sir?
No,
In the
see,
current month or adjustment period? Yeah. Go ahead, sir.
no. The point is, so you purchase something from the supplier, right? And you got
Correct.
invoice from the supplier. When you purchase
Yeah.
something from supplier, what you are purchasing, you record in the purchasing application. Against that purchase, if you get invoice, that you record in the payables. Anyway, these things we didn't discuss.
Okay.
Let me answer. The invoice you create in the payables application. Finally, everything you will send to GL for reporting. This is how the cycle will work.
Okay.
Yeah. This all will understand when we are working, will understand. Okay. Now we are not talking about that. Very high level I explained in which module what you can record. That's it. We are not talking about that cycle, how the routing takes place. When we deal with that, yes, we'll understand. Since we are not talking about it, let's turn off it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So one more question is that tax application is not available in the FSM. Is it automatically loaded?
Yeah, tax application is available within the Fusion applications, okay, in the Fusion environment. So wherever you want to calculate the tax accordingly through tax application, we do the setups, and first we can simulate. We can test whether tax is working or not. If it is working, we facilitate the tax calculation for real transactions. So if you talk about FSM for everything. Okay, FSM for everything. If you go to that FSM page, there you can see all the applications. If you select financials, what are the applications are part of finance, you could see there, including the tax also you can see.
Okay, but in the current environment, I could not see the tax application also. That's what my question raised.
Yeah, no worries. If they are not showing in finance, we know that is belongs to finance. You can find separately in the global page also, but it would be available. Try once again.
Okay,
When we go through our classes, we will see that, but it would be available along with the finance.
okay. That's it.
Great. Any other questions?
Oh, my question is on previous class. So we
Yeah.
are having values same in both company and intercompany. So can we use same value set for both of them?
No. We discussed reason
Okay.
also, right? So in EBS, there is a concept called as secured rule that we set at segment level. That is the reason we can use same value set for company and intercompany in EBS. But here, the secured rules works at value set level. So whatever the value set used for company, if you use for intercompany, if you set any secured rules for company purpose, that will be applicable for intercompany also. That will create
Okay. Yeah.
different use case when you record the transaction. That is the reason we don't use company value set for intercompany, even values are same. Reason, security rule concept. When we work on security rule, we will understand that point. But I given that point only for the people who are from EBS background. Are you from EBS background?
Yes, I
Then you can
got
understand it,
now.
right?
Yeah, I got it now.
Yes.
And in intercompany segment values, can we miss any of the values which are in the company values? Can we miss because we are not using that company for intercompany transactions purpose?
We don't miss anything. We capture everything. If you don't want to record the transactions, you don't record. That's it. We
Okay.
don't follow
Thank you.
such kind of approach where what are the companies
Yeah.
we have, we miss in this. No. All we maintain. So the business will record the transaction how they require. Since we are saying intercompany, So between which companies transaction takes place, accordingly we have to maintain. Ideally, we bring all the values into intercompany. It is not like, so you have 10 companies, but in the intercompany you maintain 2. No, we maintain all, but business knows the transactions are happening within the organization between which entities. Accordingly, they record the transactions.
Okay, yeah, got it. Thank
All
you.
values will bring into intercompany value set. Yes. Any other questions? Any
Sir,
questions? Yeah.
for intercompany, it is the label which enable
No, don't focus on
intercompany
this
to.
now. Okay, not required. See, for now, the
Okay.
label, etc., because we have to understand those. Just take the data, what we discussed, that is enough. How the label is useful, right? Why we have to assign. That just make a note. For intercompany segment, we are assigning intercompany segment label. Why? We don't know as of now.
Okay.
Out of these 4 labels, we discussed so far what is the purpose of natural account segment label, right? Anyone can talk about why we are assigning natural account segment label to account segment?
Because we need to give the value attributes.
To add 4 additional value attributes called account type, third party control account, reconcile, and financial category. If you answer like this, that will become answer. Otherwise, you may feel it as answer, that is not answer. Yeah, how you are answering, you might be knowing, but how detailed you are answering is very important. Fine. Any other questions from anyone, please? Okay, fine. Seems to no questions. So if no questions, that's all for today. We'll catch up tomorrow, same time. Thank you all.